Siskel and Ebert review John Candy burning rubber to win a cross-country race in Speed Zone. Jeff Bridges and Farrah Fawcett go their separate ways in See You in the Morning. And Jeff Daniels is worried sick that soon he might be checking out. It's all coming up next on Siskel and Ebert.
Oh, that's all right. I just smell a wrong to his loyal canine nose, right, George? Night, Donnie.
Night.
Jeff Bridges plays a divorced psychiatrist who has to learn to adjust to his new wife and her 2 children in See You in the Morning. It's one of 5 new movies we're going to be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert. And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. Our first film is the refreshingly adult See You in the Morning, a divorce and separation-filled drama about the difficulty of starting over, both for adults and for children. Jeff Bridges plays a divorced father drawn to Alice Krieger, playing a young widow still mourning her husband.
This is a portfolio of my husband. For the last 2 years of his life, he suffered from chronic paralysis of his left hand. That was going to be part of a photographic essay of his recovery and comeback, but the paralysis returned.
These are wonderful photographs.
He was a wonderful subject.
What?
I'm thinking of Sydney's reaction when I tell her we spent the evening looking at photographs of my late husband.
They begin dating and quickly marry, and soon encounter the problems their 2 sets of children have dealing with their marriage.
Why is it that every time Jackie looks at me, I feel my flies open?
It's the giggle. She suddenly started doing it with me.
Oh, I know what it is. We just got married.
So?
We're doing it.
Doing what?
The man and the woman, their parents' age, are doing it.
I can't believe that's what it is.
Oh, the cozy little place to hide out from the world. Whoa.
Complicating their relationship is Farrah Fawcett as Bridges' first wife. She's a flirt, and they're still drawn to each other.
You remember the night Billy was conceived? We had that fight. And I came up here to get away from you. I fell asleep, and when I woke up, you were kissing me. Without that fight, there wouldn't be a Billy.
What I like about See You in the Morning is that it's messy, like life. Alice Krieger's character is not merely a noble, suffering widow, which is what you probably get in most pictures. She's got some very real problems of her own making, very particular problems in dealing with self-esteem. It's easier to walk away from a problem than deal with it for her. In fact, it is Krieger who makes this film so special. She's an actress from South Africa who played the opera singer in Chariots of Fire, and she grounds this film in a nervous reality, which I enjoyed.
I liked her very much, too, and you might remember her from Barfly, where she was the mysterious poetry magazine editor. I'll tell you about this film. I was conflicted on it, and I like that word conflicted because the movie itself uses so much psychiatric jargon. I felt the performances by both of them were terrific, Bridges and Krieger. What I found frustrating was that he is a psychiatrist who constantly tries to take his problems out of his heart and hold them out here in his hand and try to deal with them in terms of the jargon of his profession.
Right.
Now, maybe that's what the movie was about. I think so. Maybe it is what it was about, but the problem is it kept creating these scenes where nobody was saying what they really felt. They were all kind of giving themselves an emotional critique instead of really communicating, and that to me set up so much tension that I give it a I just can't quite recommend it.
Well, I was made uncomfortable about the film, but I think that's what it's supposed to do. That's the way I interpret it. In other words, it is so frustrating because these people are having such trouble dealing with what they're trying to deal with. I thought that's lifelike. I mean, these people are crippled. This movie is unremitting in showing that it is that divorce, separation, second marriage is always, not sometimes, always difficult.
The movie was written and directed by Alan J. Pakula,
Right.
who was inspired, so he says, by certain things that happened in his life, but as thought about over a long period of time. It reminded me of some of the movies by Blake Edwards, like That's Life, in which he's also going back and looking at these issues. And the problem, and also the strength maybe of these autobiographical movies, is that really, because they're so important to the filmmaker, a certain amount of being able to look at it from the outside is lost.
Well, all I can say is it seemed real to me, and I enjoyed it.
Next movie, and this is a caper movie named Disorganized Crime. The film stars 4 big city bank robbers who called together by a criminal mastermind and asked to gather in the backwoods of Montana. And once they get there, they're going to stick up a bank. But first they move into a secret hideout and wait for instructions. But their leader, played by Corbin Burnson, has already been picked up by the police, and the longer they wait, the jumpier they get, especially when they hear gunshots in the distance. 2 of the crooks, Fred Gwynn and Reuben Blades, go out to investigate.
What do you see?
A couple of kids.
Kids? Doing what?
Shooting at bottles. They're not even hitting them.
A lot of the movie's jokes involve falling into mud and cow pies and pig slop.
Stop the truck!
Ho, 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 and send them to the cleaners. Meanwhile, the mastermind has escaped from the cops who've been trying to track him down on both sides of a river.
George, don't drop the flashlight!
I spilled my clothes in the river! Get my clothes!
The real problem with disorganized crime is that it has too many chase scenes and way, way too many scenes of people falling into mud and manure. And it doesn't have nearly enough scenes about the bank heist itself. I always love it in a bank heist movie when the movie meticulously details the step-by-step process of breaking into a bank vault with the seconds ticking away on the clock on the wall. But this movie goes for the slapstick and cornball barnyard humor instead of trying to be clever. The one neat touch is the way the youngest member of the gang, played by Lou Diamond Phillips, booby-traps the local police cars. He's pretty clever, but that's not enough to save the movie.
Yeah, I had the same reaction, was that the bank job, which is all this is leading up to, is thrown away. I suppose the filmmaker would say that his film isn't about a bank job, it's about these characters, but in that case, it just didn't never work for me. I think what he's trying to do is show what could possibly go wrong and how sloppy things would be. But even on that level, the film didn't even work to me because it wasn't lifelike sloppy. It was movie sloppy and corny sloppy.
Also, another problem I found in the editing, a recurring joke throughout this movie is people falling into stuff.
Right.
And then there's always the shot afterwards.
Its original title was Cannonball Run 3, but Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise are missing from the racing crew this time. Little matter, it's still an atrocious excuse for entertainment. You know the formula, a bunch of middling actors humiliate themselves in cameo roles as they compete for a cross-country road race in some nice cars.
I drive alone, that's the deal. I don't want some goof sitting next to me all the way to California, throwing my timing right off.
Ah, there she is.
She who?
Your passenger, Tiffany.
Tiffany? Mind you, another person in the car would be company.
The dialogue is less than thrilling. Witness this interchange between Matt Frewer and Joe Flaherty.
You better know what you're doing. I know what I'm doing, Victor. Leave me alone. Let me concentrate. Somebody got up on the wrong side of bed this morning. Shut up!
How witty. The would-be comedy is at its most depressing with this self-mocking bit between flight attendant Brooke Shields and the Smothers Brothers.
Oh, Brooks! It's Brooke, lady. Not Brooks, Brooke. There is only one of me.
Brooke Shields, that's Brooke Shields.
Brooke.
Yeah.
Well, don't mind me asking, but why, your work, what do you,
After 4 years of Princeton, my professor suggested I seek higher goals. So I figured, what better place, you know, to keep my face in the public. And besides, I don't want to spend the rest of my life doing bit parts in movies.
Oh, it's not that bad.
It sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I don't think that joke gets them off the hook. In fact, I think they're just cinematic hookers there, working for a probably inflated salary for a couple of days and just phoning the performance in. I liked looking at a few of the cars, but anything involving human beings in Speed Zone was dismal. If I have a pet peeve about movies, it's the ones that are so venal they don't even try to be good. That's Speed Zone.
You know, what I would have done before I made this movie, in fact, I wouldn't have made this movie. That's what I would have done. I would have taken everyone who was working on the screenplay and who was working on the production and working on the direction, and I would have chained them to a theater seat. And I would have put all kinds of little meters all over their body, and I would have forced them to look at Cannonball Run Part 1 and Cannonball Run Part 2. And then I wouldn't have allowed them to use anything in this movie that they didn't laugh at in the first two movies. Now, since the first two movies have no laughs at all whatsoever, they would have quickly realized that there were also no laughs in this movie. Not one.
Not one.
I sat there in a room full of people and I listened, and nobody laughed even one time for 95 minutes because this movie is not funny.
Yes. Other than that, Mr. Lincoln, how'd you enjoy the play? It's shameful. I mean, you feel there, and I felt depressed. Really depressed at the movies, depressed that I had to be there. You know, I already tried. Well, I already had one film earlier this month that made me want to quit my job.
That Brooke Shields and Smothers Brothers.
That's sad.
Now, wait a minute. The Smothers Brothers are clever people. They might have been able to come up with something which broke the reality, in which they pulled their paychecks out and endorsed them and put them in the mail deposit envelopes or something and developed the fact that they were only in the movie for money. In fact, you could probably make a top secret or airplane type movie about a cannonball movie in which everybody is playing a middling actor, as you put it, selling out for cash. And you can make a satire on that, but this movie is pathetic.
No, it's not
This movie is to be ashamed of.
I agree. I'm sorry I had to see it. Coming up next, Jeff Daniels is convinced he's going to die in a comedy called Checking Out.
That's neat, Dad. Can I have one?
We'll take two.
Checking Out, and it's a suburban fantasy about an airline vice president whose best pal drops dead of a heart attack right there in the prime of life and in the middle of a joke. The VP is played by Jeff Daniels, and he's convinced he's going to be the next one to go. But there's actually not a single thing wrong with him. Still, the morning after his friend's funeral, he has a terrifying nightmare and drops right out of the bedroom window onto the top of his station wagon, setting off the alarm. He's sure he's going to die.
Yes, I have chest pain.
He's got chest pains, Mom. Ask him if his arm hurts. Does your arm hurt, Dad?
Oh, which one?
Come on, Dad says which one.
Come on. He said he'll meet us at the hospital. Get dressed.
Oh, good. Okay, let's go. Oh. Oh.
Hold it up there. Hold it, we'll shoot.
No! Ah! I live here, for God's sake. I live here. No, you mustn't. That's my husband.
He insists on test after test after test, but they all prove the same thing. He's in excellent health. He keeps insisting on more tests.
At first glance, I'd say that's a normal echogram.
At first glance?
It's a normal echogram, Mr. Marsland, but I'll send it for analysis. Just to please you and to avoid a legal action in case I'm wrong.
How can I sue you if I'm dead?
Litigation will always find a way.
You know you're in trouble when you work for an airline and you're afraid to get on a plane. He fakes a bomb threat to empty the plane, and then he has to face his boss.
Oh, Mr. Lardner. I gave you everything one man could give another. And you in my hand. I hate you!
That's right, Harry. I couldn't do it.
You're off the team. Your history, Macklin!
Okay, I've got to give Checking Out credit for one thing. It's not a standard, no-brainer formula comedy, and in fact, compared to Speed Zone and Disorganized Crime, this is a comic masterpiece. It's filled with a lot of good ideas, and the hero's fear of death gives it a certain urgency, but the movie never quite works. That may be because of a confusion of styles. Some of it's sincere, some of it's fantasy, some of it's black humor, and while it may be because there are too many subjects here, not just death, but also office politics, adultery, friendship, psychiatry, all sorts of other things they're trying to deal with. And there's one other problem. Just before he dies, that best friend started to tell a joke about why Italians don't like barbecues. Now, Now, the hero spends the whole movie trying to find out the punchline that his friend didn't live to deliver. The hero even goes to heaven to try to find out how that joke ends. And sitting in the audience, I kept thinking, gee, everybody knows the answer to that one.
Well, tell us the punchline.
No, I won't tell you. Everybody knows.
Oh, that's because the spaghetti falls through the grill of the barbecue, and that's supposed to be funny. That's not that funny a joke, and it's not that funny a movie. I'm interested in the subject of panic attacks and people, you know, afraid that they're going to die.
Yeah.
It's sort of the yuppie disease, and I know lots of people who have that problem, and it's a very real thing. If this were shot in the style of, let's say, All That Jazz, you know, dark black comedy, it could work. But the way it's shot here, the film doesn't really doesn't take its subject that seriously in a strange way.
The material is too heavy for the tone, and the tone keeps changing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I didn't like the way it was shot with the anamorphic lens. That seemed silly with this thing wide split out. I mean, it's just.
But the other thing, here's a movie in which at one point somebody can go to heaven. At another point, it's very meticulous in terms of office politics.
Right.
We don't know what the rules are. It's like tennis without a net. You don't know where a scene can go because the director hasn't told you what his limits are, and so everybody seems to be, including the actors, seem to be wandering around inside the screenplay.
It's an interesting subject. They just didn't pull it off. Coming up next, Little Vera, a controversial film about contemporary Russian life that is raising eyebrows because of its sex scenes. Next film is called Little Vera. It's from Russia, and it's achieved notoriety because of a couple of nude scenes involving its star, Natalia Nagoda, who is appearing in the May issue of Playboy magazine. But if this is the movie equivalent of Glasnost, of Hands Across the Political Ocean, then we're all in trouble because Little Vera turns out to be a bore. Vera herself is a bore. She ignores her parents and listens to rock music.
Виктор же с женой приедет. Ну-ка, иди сюда. Я кому сказал?
Верка, ну ты хоть соображаешь, что ты делаешь, а?
On the beach with a boyfriend, Vera looks apolitical, but she talks a sarcastic conventional game.
А училище связи почему выбрала?
Ты что пристал, а?
А интересно.
Не знаю. У нас в школе один день, неделю мы ходили на телефонный узел. А между прочим, ты знаешь, что с телефонистками все очень хотят познакомиться?
Да ну.
Да-да.
Ну, а цель у тебя в жизни есть?
Цель, Сережа, у нас одна. Коммунизм.
Little Vera is certainly not worth seeing for the sex scenes. They're tame, and the whole movie is nothing special, just a routine story of disaffected youth annoyed with living in cramped quarters with parents who drink rather than communicate. If this movie weren't from Russia, there would be nothing noteworthy about it at all.
Oh, I disagree with you, Gene. And furthermore, I think that I really related to the movie as not being a Russian film, but being a film about a particular human problem, which is people living in poverty with too much alcohol around. And the father's alcoholism has infected the entire family. It's driven a wedge between himself and the mother. The children can't communicate. When she gets a boyfriend, he has to move in with him because of the housing shortage in Russia. I imagine that in the Soviet Union, this film is seen as extremely critical because of the way it deals with the fact that they had the extra kid in the first place just to get an extra bedroom. In other words, that's from one point of view. From the other point of view, though, the drinking, didn't you see how this was a dynamic of how this girl, who is not a bad girl, not a boring girl, just a typical teenager, is just driven up the wall by the sickness in her family.
Well, I mean, I saw that she had those reactions, and I felt like I'd seen everything in this film before. I didn't feel it was presented in any kind of fresh way. It may be fresh for Russians. I'm not one, and as I saw it, I said, so what? I mean, I thought this story was rather perfunctory, that's all.
Okay, now let's take another look at, well, I just wanted to say one more thing, though. I think the whole business about the sex scenes is a complete red herring.
I believe.
And the Playboy cover and so forth. This is not a sex movie.
Not at all.
So a Russian actress takes off her blouse, you know?
Big deal.
Big deal. Okay, so we get that out of the way. Let's take another look at this week's movies. We had a split decision on See You in the Morning. Gene thought it was adult and heartfelt, and I did too, but I felt it was conflicted between psychiatry and simple emotion. We both voted thumbs down on Disorganized Crime, the bank heist movie that depends too much on dumb sight gags involving barnyard humor. Two more thumbs way, way, way down for Speed Zone, a movie about the Cannonball Run that makes the Cannonball Run movies seem almost good in retrospect. And 2 more thumbs down for checking out a movie about a hypochondriac with a fear of death. Jeff Daniels struggles manfully, but is unable to take off with a script that throws in everything but the kitchen sink. Finally, a split decision on Little Vera, a Russian film that's unusually critical of Soviet society. I thought Natalia Nagota was brilliant as a young girl trapped between her father's alcoholism and her own lack of a role in life, but Jean felt the only remarkable thing about the movie was that it was from Russia. So for me, good performances in See You in the Morning, but the only one I'm recommending is Little Vera.
And I think See You in the Morning is worthwhile. I think that the problem you had about it is the very problem that the movie's about. That's it for this week. Next time, we'll have reviews of more new movies, including Miss Firecracker, starring Holly Hunter from Broadcast News, competing in a Mississippi beauty pageant. And James Belushi stars as a cop on the beat with a dog as a partner in the comedy Canine. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.
Raisinets and Goobers are playing everywhere, starring plump, juicy raisins and great golden peanuts. Both now feature creamy Nestle milk chocolate. After work or after workout, Daisy Turbo Spa combines powerful water massage and tingling aeration to turn your tub into a personal whirlpool. Backed by popular demand, your favorite old-time chewing gums, Beeman's Blackjack and Clove. A totally different taste experience. Beeman's Blackjack and Clove, available for a limited time only. Tap and SureCook Space Saver Microwave is perfect for kitchens where space is at a premium. Tap and Touch solid state controls, automatic temperature probe, and wood grain decor furnished by Tapper.